Open source hardware automated guitar player. We present the first open source hardware design and build of a physical robotic automated guitar player. Uses own instruments being different shapes and sizes, the system is designed to be used and or modified to physically attach to a wide range of different instruments. Design objectives include ease and low cost of build. Automation is split into three modules: left hand fretting, right hand string picking and right hand palm muting. Automation is performed using cheap electric linear solenoids. Software APIs are designed and implemented for both low-level actuator control and high-level music performance. Roughly it looks like this. This is the left-hand module attached to the fretboard. These are the right-hand modules attached for picking the strings and for palm muting. This is fully open source hardware, which means it also exists here on GitLab with full documentation for how to build this system for yourself and to run it on your own guitar, such as these. Roughly the build process has 3 steps. You can follow instructions here for the physical build. This is going to involve some 3D printing, buying some solenoids and other parts, and putting them all together for the 3 modules: fretting, strumming and muting. So for example, let's take a look at the fretting module. You can see you've got all the CAD files here needed to build this thing. Detailed bill of materials, including links for example sites where you can place orders to buy everything, circuit diagrams and so on. So why do we want to build an open source robotic guitar player? Or rather, why do we want a robotic guitar player, and then why do we want to make it open source? There are around 4 major use cases of autonomous instruments in general. So these include assistive technologies. Some people have disabilities or partial disabilities, which mean they can't play an instrument in its normal form, but would still like to be involved in participating in playing live music. So you might, for example, want to automate one hand of a guitar and have the user play the other hand, either the strumming or the fingering. Similarly, in music education, that kind of setup can be very useful. A student might want to work on one hand at a time. As you do in a swimming lesson, you might use a float so that you can practice just your legs rather than your arms, or vice versa. Why not use a system to automate your left hand or your right hand while you're working on the other one? Then we go to artistic installation applications. Instruments like this have been used as new instruments which can do things that human players cannot, which can extend the repertoire. So for example, there's a very famous system called the Z machines, which composers like Square Pusher have worked on. Let's just take a short look at some of the music that can be played by an autonomous guitar. Okay, so that just gives some idea of the creative possibilities. That's not an open hardware system, though. That's not available for anyone else to use who isn't part of that project. And the final use case is as aids to composition. So especially in pop and rock production, it is common for the music to be written for an instrument by someone who does not play that instrument. You might have a songwriter in the studio and they would like to write and record for guitar, but they don't play guitar themselves, and they don't want to hire a session musician, and they'd like a system that can perform the music perfectly to make a studio recording. So why would we want to do this open source hardware? Open source hardware is quite a new concept. It's related to open source software, extending the idea to physical stuff, and has been popularized in particular by the mainstreaming of 3D printing technology. So open source hardware means roughly anyone can download the instructions and the plans for the hardware, and using basic workshop techniques should be able to create, fabricate their own version of the system at low cost. So this has become very important in academic research due to reproducibility. There have been many automated guitar robots before, they're reviewed in the paper, but none of them have been open sourced in this form, and that means that every time someone creates an autonomous player project, they have to do it from scratch, and we have replicated a lot of work by everyone having to do that every time they want to work in this area. So by creating a fully open source version, we hope to put this out there so that other members of the community can pick this up and extend it, improve it in all kinds of directions, and stop having to replicate work. Our system is not yet as good as many of those other systems. We don't claim this is the best automated guitar in the world, but we do claim it's the best starting point to put the whole community onto one platform and to help to bring those people together. And we'd really love it, in particular if the authors of some of those original systems would like to get involved in building up a single shared system in this way. Open source is particularly important in an artistic field such as music, because the community contains people from many different cultures all over the world, and there is often a problem when you do music technology that you build the technology for your own culture. So if you play flamenco guitar because you're from Spain, for example, you are more likely to build in lots of features that are great for flamenco playing, but not for blues playing or jazz playing, for example. There are many types of guitar. Our system is designed to work out of the box on most Western 6-string electric and acoustic guitars. But as part of our research, we looked into the whole guitar family. There are close relatives such as 7-string guitars and basses. There are more distant relatives in the lute family, such as sitars and dutars and tars and ouds. And all of those instruments should be somewhat usable with a close relative of this system. And by making it open source, that means anyone is free to not only modify the main design, but also to fork the design in order to operate with different forks of those lute family instruments. So we'd really love it if someone took this and ran with it and turned it into a sitar player or an oud player, for example. So the system contains these 3 modules. They all come as CAD files, which can be 3D printed and assembled with some easily available additional components such as solenoids and nuts and bolts. There is an Arduino controller. The software is provided sitting on the Arduino. That software implements a serial protocol. We also have a higher level API in Python. The serial protocol is designed to give the most accurate control of everything that the instrument can do. So that includes raising and lowering the fingers, picking the strings, moving the palm mute up and down. So we define a serial protocol with commands such as this. There are 2 main types of commands. These are commands to the fretting module. Here you specify the string number, the fret number, whether you want to go up or down, and ideally if you want any bending. Bending is not yet implemented, but it's built into the protocol for if anyone in the community would like to come and implement string bending for us. There are commands for picking and muting. Similarly, you describe the string, You describe the type of hit. Do you want a pick or a hammer-on or a pull-off or a tremolo? Currently only picking is implemented. It's there in the protocol. For extensions, you say the velocity that you want the hit to occur with. As in MIDI velocity, this is a real physical velocity. It's how fast you want the pick to make contact with the string. And there is a end command which says actually do it now. Sometimes you might want to queue up a bunch of these commands, for example to hit all 6 strings at the same time to simulate a strum. This allows you to do that and then say go at the end. The mute is treated as a 0th string along with the 6 physical strings, so you give commands to the mute in a similar way as giving it to the string. The system is modular, so here we are covering only the first 3 frets of a guitar, but this whole module could be printed out multiple times. It's designed so you could cover the whole fretboard by putting a sequence of modules along it. Or if you only want to do cowboy chord type playing, then one module is sufficient for that kind of musicianship. We can just about do hammer-ons and pull-offs using these solenoids. There's an option to create a fingertip to add on to the end of the solenoid to make the hammer-ons and pull-offs a little more realistic. We can pick the strings at something like 10 picks per second, which is pretty good. Not as fast as a super flamenco player, but good enough for most styles. There are still a few minor timing issues around the firmware and getting the picks to make contact with the strings at exactly the right time. Some of this can be done in the high-level API, so rather than send those serial messages, we have a Python system that just says play an E minor chord or play a major chord, and we've defined a bunch of standard musical patterns such as arpeggios and strums, so you can say play an E minor chord with the left hand and then play a strum, or play a Bach cello style finger picking pattern as an arpeggio. There's still a little work to do to make those high-level timings quite correct, because it takes a non-zero time for the plectrum to move and to make contact with the string, which human players are very good at compensating for. But if anyone's interested to come and contribute to the project, fixing those high-level timings could be a really great thing to do. Other things we'd love people to do would be implement bending. A great way to implement bending would be probably to push down on the strings above the nut on the headstock. Rather than trying to bend them horizontally on the fretboard, you could just vary the tension up at the top to simulate the bending sound. So here's an example of playing House of the Rising Sun with the automated guitar. Okay, so the pattern is recognisable, the chords are recognisable. There's still a little work to do on the timing. It would be great if anyone could get involved. This is a fully open source hardware and software project, and we are actively looking for new members. If you're interested, please come and find the project on the GitLab. The link is in the paper. We'd really love to hear from people who'd like to use the system, to compose with it, to try building their own copies of it, and also from anyone interested in developing. If you're interested to make any of those extensions, like the string bends, fixing the timing, adapting it for other instruments, it would make a great student project, great MSc project, or maybe something bigger. Please get in touch with us and let us know if the system is interesting for you. Thank you.